Whoever it be you. Welcome, Doctor. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Am I on? Yeah, MIT people are really bad at technology. So, yeah, good evening. And thank you for the opportunity to cross state lines to talk with you this evening. I just want to say the prior presentations were so terrific. I just want to say three simple points. First, screening is highly cost effective and highly informational in children who arrive to learning in kindergarten. There are simple, inexpensive, easy to administer tests that can identify children who are at high risk for reading failure. And that's essential. First, you spare the child the kind of pain that you heard about, not understanding why they're failing to read. You identify children who are at high risk. And second, it lets you start to help them when programs are effective. The science shows very clearly that the Orton-Gillingham kinds of programs, and it's a kind of instruction, it's not a product, it's a kind of instruction, just to be helpful, are most effective when they're done in kindergarten, and first grade, and second grade, and then they fall off in their effectiveness with every passing year. So if you wait, you really deprive these children of the most effective education that we now know to help them gain the best reading they can. Waiting is really tragic loss of opportunity. And we know that children who begin as poor readers likely end up as poor readers without this kind of help. It persists through their education. The third point I want to address also is that although this kind of legislation and these programs are really targeted ideally for children, that 1 out of 10 children who have dyslexia, you also have a tremendous effect on children who fall behind in reading and education because of poverty, and a tremendous effect on achievement gaps, because many children who don't have this kind of a difference fall behind in reading because of the lack of supportive environments that they grow up in and are not school ready. Screening will capture these children. The right kind of instruction will let them catch up in terms of being able to read words and progress in school, do well in school, complete high school, and go on to college education. So you will be doing a tremendous service not only to the 1 out of 10 children who have clinical dyslexia, but to every child from poverty who is behind on reading and will struggle to make advances in school. So you will have a tremendous effect through screening and through supporting teachers in schools in identifying and being trained in the kind of interventions that we know help these children flourish. Thank you very much.
Dr. Gabrieli, the early intervention that you emphasized, is that a period of developmental development where there is more plasticity in the brain?
Plasticity.
Do you have any research that supports actually at that time that the brain development changes?
That is a period of tremendous brain plasticity, especially in language, which is the essence of learning to read. Reading is basically print making language visible. So yes, it is that. And it's also the case that the kinds of instructions we have so far that are most effective involve single word identification. And that's what children are learning, especially as they begin to read. In the later stages of reading, when you learn how to deal with complex text, it's actually much harder to know how to help children. Where we have the scientific evidence of programs that work is to help a child read words accurately. And those kinds of programs are most effective in this stage of development. And they're the first steps. If you can get the words correct, you can get the sentences, you can get the paragraphs.
Is there, developmentally, is there another period of time that is also possible to get some of those same neurological changes that we get at the early intervention stage?
So the brain is plastic at all stages. Education goes on at all changes. Brain changes occur at every level of education, even for those of us who finish formal education, we hope, right? But there's an ordering that matters. And that children need to start to know what these individual words are before they can read complicated text. And the kinds of interventions that get them ready for that so that everything else can happen, that really occurs in the early grades. And that's where the interventions have their biggest effect, because the children are off and running in their capacity then for higher order learning.
And during the 70s, there was a Dr. Delicato who came up with a theory of brain patterning, that there was a trend, and today I noticed it's kind of come back a little, where they get people in reciprocal crawling and they think some kids missed a stage. Is that a therapy that is beneficial to this population at all?
So I'm not familiar with that therapy. I'm sorry to tell you that. I'm just not. But the concept that you're describing, which is that there's a sequence of things that have to happen, is really fundamental. I mean, children who are going to school, their brain changes in a certain area, in the back left, that becomes specialized for print, because we're not born with that. And that specialization then lets them relate print to ideas. So it's really, all the science says early identification and the kind of instruction that helps children get going. It's a special moment that's very hard to get back, in the spirit of what you said.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? Yes, Representative Speakman.
Hi, thanks.
Hi.
As one of the prior witnesses suggested, this legislation is very specific, and one of the specifics that it has is on page 2, line 28, which says that the screening process should use the comprehensive test of phonological processing.
Yes.
Is that your preferred?
Yeah, so you can ask any expert and they'll have tiny differences, but that's a great test. And that can be augmented with 2 very simple tests. Dr. Gabb, who you heard earlier, and I used that together with a couple of other tests, 30 minutes with individual testing with a kindergarten child. Tremendous prediction in who will be a struggling reader 2 years later. So the CTOP that's abbreviation for that, is an excellent choice, very well documented, easy to administer by somebody who gets just a little bit of training. Lots of teachers could do that.
And the bill also makes frequent references to dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia.
Yes.
Are those all affiliated?
They tend to travel often together, not all the time. It's amazing the number of children who struggle to read who also struggle in math. This has not been noted for some time, but now that we're so aware of how STEM is so important for children's education and job opportunities, it's amazing how often children who struggle with reading will also struggle with math. So it's good to identify this difficulty early.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.